Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to Best of Designers. And today we're talking about one of the most famous designers in the world, and that's Uwe Rosenberg. Now, Mr. Rosenberg was known for a while for making small card games. He made quite a lot of them. The most popular one was Bonanza, which, incidentally, is not on my list of top 10 games, although I really do like Bonanza. I think that it's a good game. It just didn't make my top 10. But he had an interesting idea in Bonanza where the cards were in a specific order and you could not change them, and it also promoted trading. And he did many games like that and many Bean spin-offs of Bonanza. And then at some point, some gears shifted with him and he started making big, grandiose board games. Agricola came out and was a phenomenal hit, right, across the board. People were just, frothing at the mouth for it, and now each year when he does his new big board game, it's kind of an event. So these are my top 10 games from Uwe Rosenberg. Number 10 is Würfel Bonanza. Now, there's a lot of different versions of Bonanza. There's the card game, which is the most famous one. Many different variations on that card game. There's a board game, which actually I don't think is very good. And then this is kind of like the dice game. And unfortunately, Würfel Bonanza has not hit American shores, which I don't understand, because the idea of rolling dice and trying to match combinations on the cards, it really works well. It's a really fast-paced, fun little game, and I really enjoy it. Number 9 is Ora and Labora. Now, these big, giant games that he makes, they're not all going to be on my list. You're not going to see Newsfjord, you're not going to see Glass Road. I think many of them are good. Very rarely do I play one of his big games and think it's bad. Ora and Labora has probably the most things going on. You have this tile, that's this turnstile that's moving around, and it shows how much of a resource is available. And there's not any, each game is pretty much the same. The scoring takes a while because you're checking all these buildings. You're kind of building up this grid of buildings and putting them together and getting lots of points that way. But it's very satisfying. I don't know how else to explain it. It's satisfying to kind of put everything together and then produce your final score. So I like it. Number 8 is Fields of Arle. Now, I have not yet played this with the 3-player expansion, and the reason this one is lower on the list probably is because it's only 2-player. But it is kind of a really unique game. It's this back and forth as you are, a lot of his games have to do with farming and building things on grids. This one is kind of getting rid of peat moss and building in the marshes. And you are building up these things, and you're doing so by kind of going back and forth on the different sides. And in this game, you're really kind of watching what your opponent does. And the more effort you put into one slot will make that slot better for you. So it's a really thinky, cool game, Fields of Arle. Number 7 is Le Havre Inland Port. Inland Port is one of the 2-player games of his bigger games. Well, we might mention Le Havre later. But there were several of these. Caverna Cave vs. Cave, Agricola, All Creatures Great and Small. But I have this soft spot for Le Havre Inland Port. It had this really kind of mathy feel to it, as you have this grid and you're moving tokens around and they go up, down, left, right, and basically how they moved was income and things. It doesn't really feel like Le Havre much at all, but it felt like a cool little 2-player back and forth, crunchy little game, and therefore I liked it. Number 6 is Indian Summer. Now, there are many games that Uwe Rosenberg has done in which you are trying to cover up a spot with tiles. Probably the most famous is Patchwork, which, while a fine game, did not make my list here. But Indian Summer is his newest release in this saga, and I really enjoy it. It's just essentially a race to cover up your floor of leaves. First person to do that wins, and you're doing so by placing tiles out. But as you place these tiles out, you get some bonuses, which might give you a chance to put out extra tiles in weird shapes. But you can get so caught up in those bonuses that you don't actually put the tiles out. Very simple, fun game, and has a really beautiful look to it. Then right on the tails of that, my number 5 is Cottage Garden, which is another game, again, where you're putting out these grids. In Cottage Garden, you are simply just trying to get the most points. You're covering up all the spots of a garden except for different pots, and that's going to score you points. You actually have 2 different scoring things, which is a little wonky to explain to new people. But once you get going, it's very simple. The grid of how you pick the tiles that go in is a very effective way. And again, both Indian Summer and Cottage Garden just give me this very pleasing, hey, I'm just putting tiles and covering things up. They're really both fun games. Number 4 is the last of the little games I want to talk about for him, and that's Mamma Mia, or the expansion O Solo Mia. Now, there's a lot of card games he's done, and I think it'd be very weird if you heard me describe and say, well, I like Mamma Mia because it's a memory card game. You're like, what? I'm out. Memory. but Mamma Mia really works well. Each player has a bunch of pizzas that they are trying to play on this table, and you're slowly playing ingredients. And when you think the pile of ingredients has enough for your pizza, you put a pizza on top. If not, though, your pizza is going to be tossed once you reveal all the cards, and someone else could put one on top of that. And so you're trying to keep track of the ingredients, which pizzas, and while it is very memory-ish, it's just fun. It's a hard game to explain. What I just explained probably didn't make any sense. But once you play around it, you're like, oh, it really makes sense. It's very easy, and I really enjoy this game. Mamma Mia or Solo Mia, they're basically the same game. You can mix them together. Lots of fun. All right, let's get to back to the big ones. Number 3, Feast for Odin. Feast for Odin is a fantastic game, once again, using that putting tiles in a grid. And that, though, is surrounded by a much bigger game, a worker placement game with, I think, 60 different places to place your workers. Some spots take multiple workers. You can do so many different things in this game, trading goods for these kind of goods, upgrading these. But the reason you're getting all these goods is twofold. One, to cover up this grid that's worth a lot of minus points. You're covering it up to get, more points. And 2, to send some food off to the feast for Odin, and so the shape of the tiles matters for everything. This game is just really well done. Very much enjoyed by myself. Feast for Odin. Number 2 is Caverna. And I should just tell you right now, Agricola is not going to be on this list. Not because Agricola is a bad game. It is a fantastic, wonderful game. I just think Caverna kind of replaces it in pretty much every way for me. Caverna, which is a dwarf farming game, you are a worker placing, trying to fill up your cave with tiles and fill up your farm and get resources. And what I like about Caverna is you get points for all sorts of different things, but you can really concentrate on one thing. There's a lot of what I call point salad games where you can get points for various things. But Caverna said, hey, you want to focus on one thing and get a lot of points for that? You can. And I enjoy that. And while it doesn't necessarily have the diversity of Agricola with the cards, it has a huge amount of diversity anyway. There's just so many different options that you can take in this game. I love it a lot. Caverna. And my favorite game, which I like a little bit better than Caverna, but these were easily my top 2, and that is Le Havre. I already mentioned the 2-player game, but Le Havre does the one thing I like the most in Euro games, and that is I have so many good choices. So in this game, the choices are simple. Take a pile of goods or use a building. That's it. And the buildings, some of the early buildings let you build more buildings, and so there's lots of different buildings. And the buildings let you change to different goods. There are, I think, 12 different resources in this game, maybe more than that. Well, with money, there's even more. Lots of different things to do, but there's always something good. I'm like, should I take that big pile of fish? Or should I use that building and change a lot of coal to this material, coke? I don't know. What am I going to do? Or should I ship things over here? There's just so many things, and the options grow as the game goes by. I like it best with 2 and 3 players, but this game just is so much fun for me. I have a lot of fun just making the best of good choices. So a lot of great games. There's many games that he's made that I have not mentioned, from the small card games to the big grandiose games. And each year, like I said, when he makes a new game, the world waits and says, what's it going to be? What are your favorite Uwe Rosenberg games? Let me know in the comments below. I know that he is certainly one of my favorite designers. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching Best of Designers, Uwe Rosenberg on the Dice Tower.